Hi, I'm Pastor Bill Vigue of Meat of the Word Ministries, and this is number 14 in an installment of teaching a series in regards to feeding your faith and starving your fears. And last session, I spoke about spiritual viruses, and I spoke about fear, it being called a spiritual virus, or being something that God did not want around the people of God that were going to engage in the battle or taking the promised land. God didn't rebuke them, He didn't scold them, He didn't yell at them, but He said, if you have fear in your heart, stay away. I want people that believe God. Well, we're going to talk about another virus here, another spiritual virus, and that is boldness. And I want to encourage you to listen carefully. This is from Acts chapter 4. And Peter and John, the apostles, were preaching and teaching. While they're preaching and teaching, there was a lame man who was born lame from a child. And he was healed, supernaturally healed by the power of God. He didn't even know what he believed at that time, but he was healed by the power of God. And so the chief rulers of the city, the chief captains of the temple, the religious leaders took them in, put them in prison, and waited till morning, called them out, and began to examine them and question them. And when they could not find a solution, and they were not happy with the fact that the man was healed, but rather grieved, we're told, they were grieved at this miracle that took place, they forbade John and Peter from preaching and teaching in that name. The story goes on to say that they went back to their own company. By this time, there were about 8,000 believers. On the day of Pentecost, 3,000 people were added to the church. And on that particular day, seeing that miracle, another 5,000 believed. And so Peter and John threatened not to, forbidden not to, not only by the religious leaders, but by the kings of the earth. And um, Luke even names them as Pontius Pilate. He was a political leader, along with King Herod, another political leader that saw danger, a danger sign in this message. Well, anyways, the apostles, Peter and John, they come to their own company and they report all that they were threatened with. And the people that were gathered together lifted up their voice to God, and they quoted from Psalm 1, Psalm 2, something that David had said, asking the question, why did the rulers rage and the people imagine vain things? Again, they were more happy, more satisfied with the things the way they were, as opposed to the Word of God bringing relief to the incurable, to the sick, to the diseased. And I'm going to say this right now, be very upfront. If you're going to a church and they don't have healings and they don't have signs and wonders, you need to get out of that church, most likely, and appreciate them, respect them, but go find a church that does teach and preach the Word of God, because they're not preaching and teaching the Word of God. They're actually disturbing the Word of God going forth. Now, when they lifted up their voice to God in one accord, they asked for three things. The first thing was, grant unto thy servants, not just grant unto your apostles, but grant unto us, your servants, that with all boldness we would preach your word. And then secondly, by stretching forth your hand to heal in the name of your holy child Jesus. And thirdly, they asked that signs and wonders would be done. Now, I've told this story so many times. Immediately, God gave those people a sign of their united prayer, and of their prayer itself. It was a prayer of faith, and they understood that the boldness of preaching the word of God was the key to the remedies of the world, just like Jesus did. And so they asked for boldness. And the Bible goes on to say that, and boldness came on them. They spoke the word with boldness, and that great grace and with great power, uh, the apostles preached the word of God with signs and wonders following. And it was just a magnificent moment, but yet there were people that were enraged by it, and other people that were just imagining things really contrary to the will of God. And it was a spiritual virus. Their fears was a spiritual virus, but in this case, boldness was a spiritual example. They had to overcome their fear and had to become bold. They knew that the boldness of preaching and teaching the Word of God would make a difference. And so they went out and they did this, and something else that happened. Not only did signs and wonders and miracles, but it goes on to say, and there was no lack among them. This was really the communion, the genuine communion table, in doing it in remembrance of Jesus, who forgives your sin, cleanses your sin, washes you away from sin, remits your sin. And it's like a day of atonement, but also it's a day of God's wrath upon those that are enraged and do not believe. But it goes on to say, forget not those benefits being including healing and your needs being met. Now, many people don't understand that bread of life and your needs being met, but this is how it is done in God's kingdom, God's spiritual kingdom. So you make the choice of what you want from God. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, or do you want your will and you want to stay content as you are and not have any friction with anybody, just obey the laws? Again, remember, it wasn't just the religious leaders that threatened Peter and John and the believers, but it was the kings of the earth, the leaders of the earth, the politicians of the earth. So keep that in mind when you think about feeding your faith and starving your fears. You have a wonderful day. God bless you.